When a modern airliner took off, but never landed, the aviation world stopped and asked the same two questions. What happened, and how could it happen in 21st century aviation? Today, on Aviatrix, we examine a scenario that still haunts the industry, a scheduled commercial flight that departed normally and then disappeared. A flight that, for investigators and regulators, forced a painful re-examination of technology, procedures, and global oversight. This is the plane that took off but never landed. This shocked the aviation industry because it exposed gaps in how we track aircraft, how data is retained, and how quickly responders can locate an aircraft in distress, even when flying one of the world's most modern airliners. To be clear, the phrase "never landed" here is examined through factual historical cases and current regulatory and technological responses. Where events remain under investigation or unproven, I'll flag that explicitly. In the next 10 minutes, we'll set the historical scene, dig into the technical and operational causes and consequences, explain the industry and financial impacts, and close with measurable steps regulators and operators are taking to ensure it doesn't happen again. When the disappearance of Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 occurred on 8 March 2014, it created the modern template for the worst-case took off but never landed scenario. Brief fact: MH370 departed Kuala Lumpur for Beijing on 8 March 2014, and contact was lost. Global searches and satellite forensic analysis subsequently suggested the aircraft continued flying for hours before fuel exhaustion. MH370 was not the first aviation mystery, but it became the clearest demonstration of a vulnerability. In certain circumstances, a commercial aircraft can stop appearing in conventional surveillance channels and become effectively unlocatable. This led ICAO and IATA and national regulators to accelerate work on a global aeronautical distress and safety system, or GADSIS, designed to ensure aircraft are tracked and, if in distress, rapidly and autonomously locatable. Key point: GADSIS introduced an aircraft tracking function requiring automated position reports at intervals no greater than 15 minutes under normal operations, and defined autonomous distress tracking to pinpoint a distress location within a tight radius for SAR. Technologies evolved in parallel. Satellite SATCOM traces used in the MH370 investigation highlighted the value and limits of existing SATCOM handshakes. Meanwhile, new services such as space-based ADS-B were deployed to deliver near real-time global surveillance coverage. Example: Ariane's space-based ADS-B became fully deployed with the Iridium NEXT constellation by January 2019, enabling global ADS-B surveillance where ground stations are unavailable. At the same time, the industry also confronted a hard technical reality about the black box. Underwater locator beacons on flight recorders transmit a pinger, but that ping historically only lasts about 30 days, creating a narrow window for underwater detection. Those three strands, gaps in surveillance once aircraft leave radar, limited black box beacon life, and the global patchwork of surveillance capability are the backdrop for every modern never-landed investigation and the impetus for regulatory fixes and technological investments since 2014. Here's how this works in routine operations. Aircraft are tracked by radar, SSR, ADS-B transponders, and various SATCOM ACARS links. On oceanic routes, procedural tracks and HF voice are used. Over remote ocean or polar regions, ADS-B ground coverage is sparse, and operators rely on periodic position reports or satellite comms. ADS-B broadcasts the aircraft's position derived from GPS, but older ground-based ADS-B is limited by station coverage. Space-based ADS-B fills that gap by receiving ADS-B messages in LEO and relaying them globally, dramatically reducing blind spots. There are a few distinct failure modes that can lead to a flight taking off and then not being located. 1. Deliberate intervention, criminal or hijack. 2. catastrophic systems failure that degrades comms and transponder. 3. Progressive incapacitation events that result in uncontrolled flight until fuel exhaustion. And 4. Operational or procedural surveillance gaps. Each failure mode leaves a different forensic signature. For example, a transponder turn-off removes SSR returns. ADS-B can be disabled, but some SATCOM handshakes persist even if cruise systems are off. That satellite handshake data proved crucial in reconstructing parts of MH370's flight path. Importantly, from an operational standpoint, the aircraft itself still has physical constraints: maximum fuel, range, and performance numbers. A Boeing 770-200ER, the aircraft type on MH370, has published fuel capacity and endurance figures that match a multi-hour flight window, and investigators used published fuel numbers to constrain likely flight duration and range. When conventional radar and voice lose contact, satellite telemetry and post-event forensic analysis become critical. In the MH370 case, investigators examined Inmarsat handshake metadata and applied models of aircraft performance to estimate a southern Indian Ocean arc where fuel exhaustion likely occurred. These techniques are powerful, but not a substitute for continuous tracking. Satellite handshake data can give probabilistic arcs, useful for narrowing search areas, but do not substitute for high-frequency position reporting or an autonomous distress beacon. That's the operational gap DADSIS and modern tracking tools are intended to close. Ensure aircraft periodically and automatically report position, the aircraft tracking function, and when an aircraft is in distress, ensure autonomous, frequent, and accurate distress tracking, or ADT, to support SAR. Several technological pathways reduce the likelihood of an aircraft being lost. Space-based ADS-B for continuous global position visibility, mandated aircraft tracking at 15-minute intervals under GADSIS, improved flight recorder designs including longer-life beacons or real-time streaming of flight data, and SATCOM-based position reporting using modern data links.
On black box evolution, regulators and industry have developed options, extended pinger battery life, and alternate concepts such as streaming critical flight data via satellite, so investigators don't rely solely on physical recorder retrieval. From a practical operator perspective, implementation choices involve trade-offs: installation and recurring SATCOM costs, integration with existing avionics and airline operational procedures, and airworthiness approvals. For many airlines, the question becomes, which solution balances risk reduction with CapEx-OpEx realities? Operationally, the clock is brutal. Underwater locator beacons historically last about 30 days once immersed. Retrofits and newer devices push that toward 90 days. But retrofitting a global fleet is a program measured in years and millions of dollars. So even with better surveillance, once an accident happens, the window for certain types of recovery remains finite. That reality is what pushed ICAO to prioritize continuous tracking and autonomous distress tracking, so SAR can get to a much smaller search area faster. This matters to airlines, manufacturers, insurers, and regulators for operational safety, public confidence, and the bottom line. Regulators worldwide moved quickly after MH370. ICAO's GADIS framework created concrete standards for tracking and distress response, and many states and operators have implemented GADIS tracking requirements: automated reporting at 15-minute intervals in normal conditions, and more aggressive coverage in designated circumstances. From an airline safety management perspective, the immediate implication is that operators must integrate continuous tracking into flight operations, update SOPs for long-range diversions, and work with manufacturers and service providers on SATCOM and ADS-B installations. This means airlines will face both one-off capital expenses and recurring service fees. For example, long-range wide-bodies, like the 777 family, are expensive assets. List prices for 777 variants in recent years have been in the low hundreds of millions of dollars range, although actual transaction prices include substantial discounts. Insurers, too, reassessed exposure. The cost of a hull loss on a long-haul wide-body, not just the airframe price, but liability, loss of revenue, and reputational damage, runs into the hundreds of millions of dollars. That drives pressure from insurers for mitigations that reduce the likelihood of lost aircraft, or shorten SAR timelines. Manufacturers, Boeing, Airbus, and avionics suppliers saw demand for upgrades and retrofits. SATCOM packages, space-based ADS-B receivers, and flight data streaming solutions. Suppliers that provide affordable, certified retrofit paths stand to win sizable contracts as operators modernize fleets. At the same time, aircraft operational economics, fuel burn, lease rates, continue to steer decisions. Small incremental safety upgrades that impose significant weight, drag, or recurring costs face much tougher commercial scrutiny. And finally, the reputational hit from an aircraft that cannot be located is massive. Public trust is fragile. Regulators and airlines must show tangible improvements in tracking and transparency, both to reassure travelers and to limit the long-term commercial fallout. What this could mean for the next decade: expect layered solutions rather than a single silver bullet. 1. Full operationalization of space-based ADS-B as a baseline for global surveillance. 2. Regulatory adoption of more aggressive tracking and distress reporting standards, building on GADIS, with states enforcing operator compliance. 3. Incremental adoption of real-time or near-real-time flight data streaming for specific high-risk operations. Financially, operators will absorb upfront retrofit costs and recurring SATCOM fees, but those costs will be weighed against reduced risk premiums and, crucially, the non-quantifiable value of public confidence. Insurers may offer premium discounts to operators who adopt recognized continuous tracking and streaming standards. Prediction caveat: none of this eliminates accidents or criminal acts. What these technologies and rules do is shrink uncertainty, accelerate SAR, and reduce the chance a modern aircraft becomes effectively unlocatable. In short, the plane that took off and never landed forced the aviation sector to modernize how the world sees and locates aircraft. From satellite ADS-B to the GADIS framework and emerging flight data streaming options, the industry is addressing the hard lessons learned. Implementation is not instantaneous, but the trajectory is clear: better surveillance, faster SAR, and a system designed to make never located a historical anomaly. Remember, aviation safety is incremental. Systems, standards, and investment follow hard lessons. The technology exists to make such disappearances far less likely. The remaining barriers are cost, regulatory harmonization, and fleet retrofit logistics. If you found this analysis useful, remember to subscribe for more aviation content. Leave your questions in the comments. I'll follow up with sources and a companion deep dive article. I'm Aviatrix, and this is Aviatrix, where we turn complex aviation topics into actionable insight. This script draws on documented investigations and regulatory material. Where events remain subject to ongoing investigation, I avoided speculation. Sources used for factual claims are linked below, and I encourage viewers to consult official investigation reports and ICAO and IATA materials for complete records.